The Weight of All My Breaks. Part 1. If love leaves scars, then my body is covered in them, though not the kind you can trace with fingers. Mine run through my chest, invisible but deep, as if each heartbreak has been another small, merciless incision. I used to think scars meant survival. Now I know they mean I let people close enough to wound me. The first time it happened, I was 20. It wasn't even spectacular. No betrayal, no violence, just the slow unraveling of a man who swore he loved me, but couldn't love himself enough to stay. One day we were laughing in my kitchen, burning pancakes and kissing in the haze of smoke. The next, he was gone. A folded note, an apology so thin it barely held its own weight. I cried like the world had ended, because for me it had. I pressed that note to my chest until the paper softened with my tears. I told myself it was the worst pain I'd ever feel. I was wrong. The second heartbreak was sharper. He cheated. Not once, not twice, but a litany of betrayals, each revealed like a fresh blade slipping between my ribs. I screamed at him in our apartment until my voice was raw, and he just looked at me with the indifference of a man who had already moved on. That was when I learned something uglier than loss. Indifference is colder than hate. By the third heartbreak, I thought I'd grown smarter, stronger. I told myself I had learned to choose better. He was kind, soft-spoken, the sort of man who remembered my coffee order and asked about my mother. I thought that meant safety. But safety can be an illusion. He left quietly, too. No cheating, no cruel words. Just the announcement that he wasn't in love anymore. As if love were a switch, something you could flick off without consequence. Each heartbreak taught me something different. How to scream, how to mistrust, how to hollow out my own expectations. But the worst one, the one that nearly ended me, came last year. His name was Daniel. He was everything my broken pieces thought they wanted. Tall, charming, a smile that could soften concrete. We moved fast, too fast. Within months, he was living in my apartment, his clothes tangled with mine, his toothbrush beside mine, his presence soaking into every corner of my life. And then came the lies. Not small lies, big ones. About where he worked, about debts, about the trail of other women he had left like forgotten receipts. I uncovered it in fragments, each discovery another blow. Until the night I found the messages. He hadn't just cheated. He'd been with 3 women while sleeping in my bed. That night, I shattered. I remember the sound of glass breaking when I hurled the photo frame across the room, the way my own reflection cracked across the floor. I remember the feeling of my chest collapsing inward, as if my heart had finally had enough and decided to fold. I remember lying on the cold tiles of my bathroom, whispering to no one, "Why does no one stay? What's so wrong with me that they always leave?" That was the night I almost gave up on love entirely. For months, I lived like a ghost. Work, home, sleep. No dates, no flirting, no letting anyone close enough to see the blood still drying on the inside of me. I told myself love was a trick, a cruel performance where the ending was always the same. But grief has a strange way of making room for something new, even when you swear you're done. I met him on a Tuesday. I didn't want to. My best friend dragged me to a coffee shop after work, insisting I needed to see people again. I rolled my eyes and agreed only because I didn't have the strength to argue. That's when he walked in, Elias. He wasn't the kind of man who turned heads with a grand entrance. He didn't stride in, loud and magnetic. He just quietly existed, and somehow the room seemed to tilt toward him. Tall, yes, but not imposing. His smile was shy, hesitant, like it wasn't used to being shown. He carried a notebook tucked under his arm, worn around the edges, as if it had been through things too. When he looked at me, it wasn't like the others. There was no hunger, no quick calculation of what he might get. He looked like he saw something fragile and wasn't sure if he was allowed to touch it. We didn't talk that day, just exchanged a smile. But that small thing, the gentleness of it, lodged itself in me. The next week, he was there again. This time, he sat near our table. He scribbled in his notebook, glancing up occasionally, and when our eyes met, I didn't look away. Something about him felt safe. Not the illusion of safety, but the quiet steadiness of it. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than I expected, warm, almost careful. I see you here a lot, he said. My chest tightened. It was such an ordinary line, but it landed in me differently. I nodded, unsure if I could trust my own voice. We talked. About books, about the weather, about coffee that was too bitter. Stupid things, small things. But his presence was like water to soil I thought was too dry to grow anything in again. I didn't fall in love right then. I didn't even think about falling in love. But something shifted. For the first time in months, I felt something other than grief. A flicker, a warmth, and it scared me, because every flicker before had burned me alive.